If you know Kratos, you know he has left an absolutely staggering trail of destruction in his wake. We're talking gods, titans, monsters, you name it, he's probably killed it. But if we actually look closely at the source material, not every single death hits the same way. Some were deeply tragic, some were, well, systemically necessary, and some were just satisfyingly overdue. Today, we're going to explore the reasoning behind these deaths, ranking them from the insanely petty to the cosmic-scale tyranny to see exactly who actually deserved their brutal end.
But hey, before we map all this out, I really want you to ask yourself, out of all the victims of Kratos' absolute rage, who actually earned their fate, and who is just a tragic victim of circumstance? Because there's a massive difference between standing in the wrong place at the wrong time and actively engineering your own doom.
Step 1 on our ladder: the petty and arrogant, egos that beg to be broken.
We are starting with the deaths that are, honestly, just a lot of fun to dissect. Take Castor and Pollux. These two were basically glorified bouncers, acting tough outside the Temple of the Oracle, riding purely on borrowed confidence. They literally had zero personal beef with Kratos and completely ignored the fact that he was their half-brother. They just sort of gate-kept with this arrogant smirk, right up until Kratos ripped Pollux directly off Castor's body.
And speaking of borrowed confidence, you've got Hermes. He was your classic trash talker who totally crumbled in an actual fight. He used his legendary speed just to humiliate Kratos, serving as Zeus's personal errand boy with absolutely zero moral compass. So when Kratos finally got his hands on him, he delivered the most poetic justice you could ask for: the conscious, surgical amputation of both of his legs. Without that speed, Hermes was literally nothing.
Jumping over to the Norse realms, we run into Heimdall. Now, Heimdall's foresight allowed him to read movements and effectively fight about 3 seconds in the future. It is a legitimately broken power. But instead of treating that kind of gift with respect, it birthed the single largest ego in all 9 realms. It gave him this sickening, super casual cruelty, especially toward Atreus.
But here is the fascinating part. Heimdall's arrogance totally blinded him to his one critical flaw. His foresight only works against conscious intention. Kratos completely exploited this lack of humility using the Draupnir spear, a weapon that multiplies and attacks from dozens of unpredictable trajectories all at once. Heimdall's mind was just overwhelmed by an absolute avalanche of simultaneous threats. He died simply because he was too arrogant to ever consider he had limits.
Moving up to step 2. Tragedy and envy, when sympathy meets accountability.
Okay, so the tone shifts pretty drastically here. These aren't the fun deaths anymore, they're deeply uncomfortable truths about victimhood and wasted potential. Take Hercules. He and Kratos actually shared a very genuine bond and mutual respect early on, but when Kratos opened Pandora's box, the evils inside literally rewired the gods. Hercules just got consumed by this pure, toxic envy. He stopped wanting to build his own greatness and just wanted Kratos to be less great. It forced this unbelievably tragic, reactive fight to the death.
Then there's Persephone. Man, she is such a complex figure, and she makes you feel terrible for agreeing that she had to go. Zeus handed his own daughter over to Hades like a piece of property, condemning her to spend eons trapped in the pitch-dark underworld for a crime she never even committed. You completely understand how divine cruelty pushed her right to her breaking point.
But that brings up a really heavy question. Does being a victim give you a free pass to destroy the entire world? Because Persephone didn't just want her freedom, or even just revenge on Zeus. She actually allied with Morpheus and Atlas to destroy the pillar of the world, which would wipe out mortals, gods, the realms, the whole shebang. She is the ultimate proof that you can be undeniably horribly wronged and still attempt cosmic genocide.
That brings us to step 3, engineers of suffering, calculated mass destruction.
Now we're getting into systemic, calculated destruction, starting with the original god of war himself. Ares didn't just inherit a cruel system. He designed Kratos' suffering completely from scratch. He scouted Kratos' violent potential, looked at his family, and literally saw a design flaw. He engineered this twisted psychological torture chamber, tricking Kratos into slaughtering his own wife and daughter, all to forge the perfect, emotionless weapon.
And there is a quote here that just nails this perfectly. He built the bomb, armed the bomb, and then stood directly in front of the bomb wondering why it was ticking. That is the supreme irony of Ares' master plan. Stripping Kratos of his capacity for love didn't make him an obedient soldier. It made him a freight train with absolutely nothing left to lose. Taking out Ares is really the foundational act of justice for this entire franchise.
Now, if Ares destroyed a single family, Odin?
Odin operated on a massive cosmic scale. Look at this. He ruined 5 of the 9 realms. He corrupted Midgard's sacred Valkyries, turned Niflheim into a literal wasteland, tore Asgard and Vanaheim apart in a devastating war, and actually sent Thor out to commit literal genocide against the giants in Jotunheim, all out of sheer paranoia.
And the wild part? He hid all of this cruelty behind a fake mask of being a wise, curious old scholar. But his true motivation was pure, desperate cowardice. He was terrified to die in Ragnarok. His obsession with omniscience drove him to manipulate everyone. He committed proxy genocide just because he couldn't handle the fact that some things were beyond his control. It gives his ultimate shattering at the hands of a grieving Sindri just an immense amount of weight. Finally, step 4 on our ladder, the Architect of Tyranny, the coward on the throne. All right, we have reached the very top of our accountability ladder, the climax of this explainer. Zeus, the guy who built the very machine that made every other crime on this list possible. To understand Zeus, you have to understand the cycle of patricide. It's a generational curse, sons overthrowing fathers, fathers brutally oppressing sons out of terror. But Zeus didn't just inherit this cycle from Kratos, he weaponized it. Instead of breaking the pattern, he chose absolute control and extreme violence.
Zeus is basically the most culpable guy on the list because his cosmic-scale cowardice fueled everything else. He sanctioned Ares' psychological destruction of Kratos. He ran the entire Olympian regime with zero accountability. I mean, he even betrayed Kratos at Rhodes, using a giant statue to try and drain his power, just because the king of the gods was literally too terrified to face him directly.
But you have to look at how it all ends. In those final moments, with Olympus literally crumbling to pieces around them, Zeus actually just stops fighting. He surrenders. He accepts his fate and lets Kratos beat him to death. The architect of all that suffering finally acknowledged that his machine of oppression deserved to be destroyed, and, well, so did he. Centuries of corrupt divine tyranny gone in a single flash of light.
So, as that corrupt Olympic regime vanishes into history, it leaves us with one incredibly heavy, lingering question. We've climbed the ladder from petty gatekeepers all the way to the ultimate coward on the throne. But with the architect finally destroyed, can the cycle of violence ever truly be broken? Or does absolute power just always demand a bloody toll? It's a question that definitely makes you wonder exactly what rises from the ashes of tyranny.